If it were you, what would you do when you receive a wedding invitation from the man who abandoned you and never once laid eyes on his own child? Would you stay silent? Or show up at the exact moment the ceremony begins, pushing your son's wheelchair down the aisle while every single pair of eyes turns toward you? I chose not to hide. But what about you? If you were the mother in this story, what would you have done? Comment below and share your honest thoughts. And don't scroll away, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The moment a little boy looks up at the groom and calls him Dad, right in front of the bride. Have you ever been part of a Reddit family drama in real life? I want to hear your story in the comments. My name is Olivia Grant. I'm a neurologist, a single mother, and a woman who once believed she could take on the world alone until the day a cream-colored wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox. 6 years ago, the man I once loved walked out of my life when I was pregnant. 6 years later, he invited me to his wedding. To someone else, I should have ripped that invitation to pieces, but I didn't. Not out of rage and not entirely out of spite. I went because my son, the child his father had never met, deserved to be seen. And maybe deep down, I needed closure too. This isn't just a story about a wedding interrupted. It's the journey of how I stood back up after silence, stepped into the very room I once vanished from, and made sure the world knew I wasn't walking in alone anymore. The invitation arrived on embossed cardstock, cream-colored and heavy in my hands. Ethan Prescott and Chloe Westwood cordially invite you to celebrate their union. My fingers trembled as I traced his name, the sharp edges of the letters cutting into my heart, just as precisely as his absence had carved hollow spaces in our lives. I almost threw it away. God knows I had every right to. 6 years of silence deserved nothing less. But something stopped me. Perhaps the same stubbornness that had carried me through residency with a newborn, through countless nights when Liam's seizures wouldn't stop, through building a life where I convinced myself we didn't need Ethan Prescott or his empire. "Mommy, what's that?" Liam wheeled himself into the kitchen, his small hands expertly maneuvering his chair around the island I'd designed at his height. His dark curls, so like his father's, fell across his forehead. "Just mail, sweetheart." I slipped the invitation under a stack of medical journals. "Is it from somebody important?" His eyes. Ethan's eyes looked up at me with that piercing curiosity that always made my throat tighten. I knelt beside his chair. "No one more important than you." But that night, after tucking Liam in, I pulled out the invitation again. The return address was Prescott Technologies headquarters in Boston, a building I'd once known as well as my childhood home. I traced the gold embossing with my fingertip. The date was 3 weeks away, a Sunday afternoon wedding at the Boston Harbor Hotel where Ethan had first told me he loved me. During my second year of medical school, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked to the mantel where I kept Liam's most recent school photo. His smile was wide and fearless, despite everything, despite the wheelchair, despite the seizures, despite the father who had never once laid eyes on him. That's when I made my decision. Not out of spite or revenge, though. I'd be lying if I said those emotions didn't flicker through me. I decided, because Liam deserved to be seen, because Ethan deserved to know what he'd lost, and maybe selfishly, because I needed to close this chapter once and for all. I picked up my phone and texted my sister, "Need a navy blue dress for a wedding, the kind that makes men regret every mistake they've ever made." She replied immediately, "Finally, I'll be there tomorrow at 10. As I set down my phone, I caught my reflection in the window. A woman I barely recognized sometimes, stronger than the young resident who'd fallen for the charming tech entrepreneur. More tired, certainly, but also more certain of her worth. I would RSVP for 2, and this time he would see us both. The Boston Harbor Hotel hadn't changed, still that perfect blend of old-world elegance and harbor views that had once made me feel like I belonged in Ethan's world. I gripped Liam's wheelchair handles tighter as we approached the ballroom entrance, my sister Rachel's reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You look amazing," she whispered. "Remember that?" I nodded, unable to speak. Liam looked up at me, his bow tie slightly crooked, despite my best efforts. "Is Daddy going to be surprised to see me?" he asked, innocent curiosity in his voice. We'd practiced this, how to talk about the father he'd never met, how to manage expectations. I'd shown him photos, told him sanitized stories. Yes, sweetheart. Very surprised. The usher at the door barely glanced at our invitation before directing us inside. The ballroom was spectacular crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. I scanned the room quickly, spotting familiar faces from my past life. Board members, colleagues, the tech elite of Boston. And then across the room, standing tall and handsome in his tuxedo, Ethan. His dark hair was shorter now, touches of silver at the temples that hadn't been there before. He was laughing at something his bride had said, his hand placed possessively on the small of her back. "Is that him?" Liam whispered, following my gaze. Before I could answer, a familiar figure approached us. Margaret Chen, Ethan's longtime executive assistant and right hand. Her smile faltered when she saw me, then disappeared entirely when her eyes dropped to Liam. "Olivia," she said, her voice tight. "This is unexpected." "I received an invitation," I replied, matching her coolness. "This is my son, Liam." Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Your son. Yes, my son." I emphasized each word, watching realization dawn on her face. Margaret's hand flew to the pearl necklace at her throat. "Excuse me," she said, hurrying away. I knelt beside Liam. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" He shook his head, his eyes still fixed on Ethan across the room. "He looks like me," he whispered, awe in his voice. My heart cracked at those words. 5 simple words that contained the weight of all I couldn't protect him from. "Yes, baby, he does." I straightened up to see Margaret whispering urgently in Ethan's ear. He frowned, then turned slowly in our direction. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment 6 years collapsed into nothing. Then his gaze dropped to Liam, and I watched the color drain from his face. He said something to Chloe, then began making his way toward us, Margaret trailing anxiously behind him. The crowd seemed to part instinctively, as if sensing the gravitational pull of this moment. Ethan stopped 3 feet away from us, his eyes fixed on Liam. I could see him taking in every detail, the dark curls, the shape of his nose, the determined set of his jaw. His gaze lingered on the wheelchair, confusion and shock battling across his features. "Olivia," he managed finally. Not a question, not quite a greeting. Just my name, as if testing whether it still belonged in his mouth. "Hello, Ethan. Congratulations on your wedding day." His eyes flicked to mine briefly before returning to Liam. "Is this—" He couldn't finish the sentence. I placed my hands on Liam's shoulders. "This is Liam. My son. Our son. I didn't say I didn't need to." The resemblance screamed what my voice wouldn't. "Hi," Liam said, extending his small hand with perfect politeness. "I'm 5.5." Ethan's hand trembled visibly as he reached out to shake Liam's. "Hello, Liam. I'm Ethan. I know." Liam said simply, "You're in the pictures Mommy keeps." Something flickered across Ethan's face. Pain, confusion, anger. I couldn't tell. The wedding guests around us had gone quiet, the weight of the moment tangible in the air. Chloe appeared at Ethan's side, stunning in her designer gown, her perfect features arranged in polite inquiry. "Ethan, is everything all right?" He didn't answer her. Instead, he looked directly at me, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" 6 years of anger, grief and isolation erupted inside me. I tried, I hissed. God knows I tried. Letters, emails, calls to your office, for months after he was born. After we found out about his condition. Margaret made a small strangled sound behind him. Ethan turned to her, something dangerous flashing in his eyes. "Margaret, is this true?" She took a step back. "Ethan, you have to understand, the company was just getting off the ground, the Series B funding the merger talks. You couldn't afford distractions." Distractions. The word fell from his lips like a stone. I watched as understanding dawned on his face, the betrayal not just mine but hers. In that moment, the perfect wedding day shattered around us, revealing the broken pieces that had been there all along. The small conference room off the main ballroom buzzed with tension. Ethan paced by the windows, his tuxedo jacket discarded tie loosened. Margaret sat stiffly in a chair, her normally impeccable composure crumbling. I stood by the door, one hand on Liam's wheelchair, anchoring myself to the only certainty in this storm. Rachel had taken Liam to get ice cream from the dessert table, giving us adult space to unravel 6 years of deception. His absence left the room colder somehow. "Show me," Ethan demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. "Show me everything she sent." Margaret opened her tablet with shaking hands. "I saved it all," she admitted. I thought someday you might want to know, but not when it mattered," I interjected, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. She didn't meet my eyes. "I was protecting the company, protecting what we'd built." Ethan's laugh was hollow. "The company, always the goddamn company." He took the tablet from her hands, his face hardening as he scrolled through what I knew was there: my desperate emails, scans of the handwritten letters, the birth announcement, medical records documenting Liam's early diagnosis, photos of his first days, first smile, first Christmas. His finger hovered over one image, Liam at 3 months before the seizures started, wrapped in the blue blanket Ethan's mother had given me when she learned I was pregnant. The last time I'd seen her before she died, neither of us knowing her son had already moved on. "Your mother knitted that blanket," I said quietly. "She was the only one who seemed happy about the pregnancy." Ethan's eyes snapped up, pain flashing across his face. "She never told me. I asked her not to. I wanted it to come from me." I crossed my arms over my chest, protecting myself from memories I'd locked away. "But then you changed your number." "Your assistant?" I glared at Margaret. "Told me you were traveling indefinitely." The letters came back unopened. "I never traveled," he said flatly. "I was in Boston the whole time." Margaret stood abruptly. "I'll resign immediately. You won't need to. Get out." Ethan's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're fired. Security will escort you to clear your desk on Monday." She flinched as if struck, then gathered her purse with trembling hands. I should have felt satisfaction watching her leave this woman who had acted as gatekeeper to my child's father. Instead, I felt hollow. She was just another casualty in Ethan's single-minded ambition, the same ambition that had eventually pushed me away too. When the door closed behind her, silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken accusations. "What's wrong with him?" Ethan finally asked, nodding toward the wheelchair visible through the glass door where Liam sat with Rachel, happily devouring chocolate ice cream. "Cerebral palsy and epilepsy." I answered clinically, the doctor in me taking over, complications during birth. He was without oxygen for almost 4 minutes. "But you're a doctor," he said, as if that should have prevented it. The unfairness of the statement hit me like a physical blow. "I was alone," I said, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. 36 hours of labor, no partner, no family nearby. The nurses were understaffed by the time they realized something was wrong. I stopped, the memories still too painful to articulate. Ethan sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "I would have been there if I had known I would have been there." "Would you?" I challenged. "You were building an empire, Ethan. You made your choice when you said a baby would derail everything we've worked for." "Those were your exact words." "I was 27 and terrified," he shot back. "I said a lot of things I didn't mean." "And I was 26 and pregnant," I countered. "But I didn't get the luxury of taking back my words. I lived with them. I'm still living with them." He stared out the window, his profile sharp against the fading afternoon light. "What does he know about me?" "That his father is a busy, important man who builds things that help people. That he has your eyes, your smile." I paused. "That sometimes adults make complicated decisions." Ethan turned to me, something vulnerable breaking through his carefully constructed facade. "Does he hate me?" The question caught me off guard. Not the arrogance I expected, but genuine fear. For the first time since arriving, I saw not the CEO or the groom, but the boy I'd fallen in love with years ago, brilliant, driven, and desperately afraid of failing. "No," I said softly. "He's been waiting to meet you his whole life." The door opened, and Rachel wheeled Liam back in his face, sporting an impressive ice cream mustache. He looked between us, picking up on the tension with that uncanny perceptiveness he'd had since infancy. "Are you mad at each other?" he asked. Ethan knelt down beside the wheelchair, bringing himself to Liam's eye level. His voice when he spoke was steadier than I'd expected. "No, buddy. We're just sorting out some grown-up stuff. I'm really glad you came today." Liam studied him with solemn eyes. "Mommy says you make computers that think like people." A ghost of a smile touched Ethan's lips. "Something like that. Do you like computers?" "I love them. I have a special one that helps me talk when I'm having a bad day." He pointed to the communication device attached to his wheelchair. "May I?" Ethan asked, gesturing toward the tablet. I nodded, watching as he examined the device with genuine interest, asking Liam questions about how he used it, listening intently to the answers. Rachel caught my eye, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I shrugged slightly, as lost as she was in this unexpected territory. A sharp knock interrupted them. Chloe stood in the doorway, her perfect makeup doing little to hide her distress. "Ethan, people are asking questions. The officiant wants to know if we're still—" She stopped, taking in the scene before her. Ethan stood slowly. "Chloe, I need to speak with you privately." She looked from him to Liam, then to me, comprehension dawning in her eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I'm sorry," he said, and I couldn't tell which of us he was apologizing to. As he led Chloe away, Liam looked up at me, confusion written across his face. "Is the wedding canceled because of me?" I knelt beside him, smoothing his hair back. "No, sweetheart. None of this is because of you. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and it takes a long time to fix them." "Is he going to come see us again?" The hope in his voice broke my heart all over again. "I don't know, baby." I pressed my forehead against his breathing and the chocolate-sweet scent of him. "But no matter what happens, you and me, we're going to be okay. Just like always." But as I watched Ethan through the glass deep in intense conversation with his bride, I wondered if anything would ever be just like always again. 3 days after the wedding. That wasn't the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Liam was at his morning therapy session with Dr. Rivera. I opened the door to find Ethan standing on my porch, looking both out of place and oddly right in the suburban tranquility of my neighborhood. He wore jeans and a simple button-down so different from his usual power suits that I almost didn't recognize him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hair was uncombed. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice rough. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered cautiously, taking in the adaptations I'd made to accommodate Liam's wheelchair, the ramps, the lowered light switches, the open floor plan. "You've thought of everything," he said quietly. "I had to." I led him to the kitchen, more to have something to do than out of hospitality. "Coffee." He nodded, sitting at the counter while I busied myself with the familiar ritual of measuring grounds, filling the reservoir, placing mugs on the counter. The domestic normalcy of it struck me as absurd given everything. "The wedding's off," he said abruptly. "Chloe deserved better than someone who—" He trailed off. "I never meant to ruin your wedding," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. Revenge had flickered through my mind, but never been my purpose. "You didn't." "I did that all on my own years ago." He accepted the mug I handed him. "Where is he?" "Physical therapy. He'll be home around noon." Ethan nodded, staring into his coffee. "I've been reading everything I can find on cerebral palsy and epilepsy, medical journals, forums, treatment protocols." He looked up at me. "You're doing groundbreaking work with neural interface devices. I found your research papers." "It's not groundbreaking," I corrected automatically. "Just necessary. The commercial options weren't working for Liam. So you designed your own." Something like pride flickered in his eyes. "You always were the smartest person in any room." I ignored the compliment. "Why are you here, Ethan?" He set down his mug. I want to know my son. I want to be part of his life. If you'll let me. I leaned against the counter, studying him. And if I say no, then I'll keep asking. I'll earn my place in his life. He ran a hand through his hair. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But he's my son, too. Olivia, being a father isn't just DNA. I said the words sharper than I intended. It's showing up every day through tantrums and seizures, and nights when the medication doesn't work, through IEP meetings and therapy appointments and surgeries. I want all of it, he said simply, the good days and the hard ones. You can't just sweep in with your billions and fix this, Ethan. There's no tech solution, no algorithm that makes cerebral palsy disappear. I know that. His voice was steady. I'm not trying to fix him. I'm trying to fix me. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Before I could respond, I heard the distinctive sound of wheels on the ramp outside, followed by Jason's deep laugh and Liam's higher one. Ethan tensed his knuckles white around his mug. Should I go? Is this too much, too soon? The uncertainty in his voice, so unlike the confident CEO the world knew, made something shift inside me. No stay but Ethan. I caught his gaze. Don't make promises you can't keep. Not to him. The door opened, and Liam wheeled in, followed by Jason Rivera, his neurological therapist. Liam's face lit up when he saw Ethan, a smile so bright it could power the eastern seaboard. You came to our house? He exclaimed, wheeling himself forward with impressive speed. Jason looked between us, confusion and concern evident on his face. I made quick introductions, watching as understanding dawned in Jason's eyes. He'd been with us since Liam was 2, had seen me through the worst days. He knew what this moment meant. We had a great session today, Jason said, addressing both of us, as if co-parenting was our normal, Liam's upper body strength is improving every week. I did 10 push-ups, Liam announced proudly. That's amazing. Ethan said, his voice genuine. He knelt beside Liam's chair. I brought something for you. He pulled a small package from his pocket. Your mom said you like building things. Liam tore open the paper to reveal a compact robotics kit, his eyes widening. Cool. Can we build it now? Ethan looked to me for permission. I nodded slightly and he grinned. Absolutely. Where's your workstation, Chief Engineer? As Liam led Ethan to the specially designed desk in the corner of the living room, Jason moved beside me. You okay? He asked quietly. I don't know. I admitted. This is all happening so fast. Jason watched as Ethan helped Liam open the package, their dark heads bent together over the components. He seems genuinely interested. For now, I said, but Liam isn't a startup you can pour resources into and then abandon when the next shiny opportunity comes along. Give him a chance, Jason suggested, surprising me. For Liam's sake, if not for yours. I sighed, watching as my son explained something to his father with animated gestures, Ethan listening with complete attention. That's what I'm afraid of, Liam getting attached, and then Ethan proving to be exactly who you fear he is, Jason finished. Or proving to be someone better than you remember. I had no answer for that. Jason squeezed my shoulder gently. I'll see you Thursday for our regular session. Call if you need anything. After he left, I joined Ethan and Liam on the floor, where they'd spread out the robot components in careful rows. Mom, it's going to have sensors so it can follow me around. Liam's excitement was contagious. That sounds incredible, I said, settling beside them. Your son has some serious engineering instincts. Ethan told me, genuine admiration in his voice. He already figured out how to modify the base unit to make it more responsive. Wonder where he gets that from, I said, dryly. Ethan laughed, the sound startling in its authenticity. For a moment, we were transported back, 2 young people who loved ideas and each other before ambition and fear tore us apart. As the afternoon stretched into evening, I watched them work together, Ethan adapting seamlessly to Liam's needs without making him feel different or less capable. When Liam's hands tremored too much for the fine motor work, Ethan became his assistant, following Liam's detailed instructions without taking over. By dinner time, they had a small robot that rolled in circles around Liam's wheelchair, responding to his voice commands. The joy on my son's face as he demonstrated his creation, a joy matched in Ethan's eyes, created a dangerous warmth in my chest that I wasn't ready to examine. "Can Dad stay for dinner?" Liam asked, the word "Dad" falling from his lips as if he'd been saying it his whole life. The question hung in the air between us. Ethan looked at me, careful not to presume. "Yes," I said finally. "He can stay for dinner." Later, after Liam was asleep and Ethan prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Thank you for today, for not turning me away." "I'm doing it for Liam," I said, needing him to understand. "He deserves to know you." "And what about you, Olivia?" he asked quietly. "What do you deserve?" I looked away, unwilling to meet his gaze. I stopped asking myself that question a long time ago. He nodded, accepting the boundary I'd drawn. "I'm going to be here," he said, "not just for him, for both of you. However you'll have me." As I watched him walk to his car, I allowed myself to acknowledge the tiniest flicker of something I'd thought long extinguished, not quite hope, but perhaps the possibility of it. For 2 months, we settled into an uneasy rhythm. Ethan came 3 times a week, never missing a visit, always arriving with thoughtful gifts for Liam, books about space, adaptive gaming controllers, materials for their ongoing projects. He attended doctor's appointments, taking meticulous notes, asking intelligent questions that sometimes even surprised Liam's specialists. I kept him at arm's length, civil but cautious. The walls I'd built over 6 years weren't coming down easily, no matter how earnestly he seemed to be trying. Jason became our unexpected buffer, his medical expertise and genuine care for Liam creating a bridge between Ethan's technological approach and my medical caution. The 3 of us formed an awkward triangle of adults circling Liam's care, each bringing different perspectives but united in our focus on his well-being. The project that consumed them was what Liam dubbed the Magic Chair, a next-generation wheelchair with neural interfaces that could respond to Liam's brain activity, compensating for his motor control issues. Ethan brought in engineers from his company, while I contributed my neurological research. Jason ensured everything remained medically sound and physically appropriate for Liam's condition. I began to allow myself small moments of trust, leaving them alone together, while I ran errands including Ethan in school conferences, accepting his offer to upgrade our home with better accessibility features. Then came the day everything shattered again. They were working late in Ethan's private lab, a space he'd created specifically for the Magic Chair project. I'd agreed to let Liam stay past his usual bedtime, seeing how excited he was about testing the new neural interface. Jason was there too, monitoring Liam's responses to ensure the stimulation wasn't too much. I was just finishing my clinic notes when my phone rang, Jason's number flashing on the screen. "Liam's had a seizure," he said without preamble. "A big one. We're on our way to Boston Children's." The world tilted sideways. I was in my car before I even realized I'd moved, driving too fast through darkened streets, my heart pounding against my ribs like it might break through. The emergency room was painfully familiar, the antiseptic smell, the 2 bright lights, the beeping monitors. I found them in a treatment room, Liam unconscious on the gurney, smaller than he should be against the white sheets. Ethan sat beside him, his face ashen, one hand gripping Liam's as if he could physically anchor him to this world. Jason stepped forward as I entered, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. "It lasted 4 minutes, longer than his usual pattern. They're running tests now." I moved to the bed, my doctor's eyes cataloging everything: oxygen levels, heart rate, the slight twitch in Liam's left hand that often followed his worst seizures. I brushed his damp hair from his forehead, my touch gentle despite the storm raging inside me. "What happened?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan looked up, devastation written across his features. "We were testing the new interface. He was so excited it was working better than we'd hoped. Then he just..." His eyes rolled back, and he broke off, unable to continue. "The stimulation pattern was within the parameters we discussed," Jason added quietly. "But he'd been working longer than usual. He was tired. I should have noticed, Ethan said, self-recrimination thick in his voice. He said he had a headache earlier, but he insisted he was fine. I should have brought him home. I wanted to rage at him, to blame him for pushing too hard, for treating Liam like one of his engineering challenges rather than a fragile child with medical complexities. The accusation burned on my tongue, bitter and familiar, another man who'd failed us when it mattered most, but the broken look on his face stopped me. This wasn't the ambitious CEO who'd once told me a baby wouldn't fit into his 5-year plan. This was a father, terrified of losing a son he'd only just found. Seizures happen, I said instead, surprising myself with the gentleness in my voice. We can't always predict them. Ethan shook his head. You warned me not to let him get overtired. You said excitement could trigger episodes. I didn't listen. He's going to be okay, Jason interjected, his calm presence steadying us both. This isn't the first seizure, and it won't be the last. What matters is how we respond, how we adjust. A nurse entered to check Liam's vitals, followed by the on-call neurologist, a colleague I knew well. They confirmed what I already suspected. The seizure had been triggered by a combination of fatigue and heightened neural activity. No lasting damage, but a clear warning to proceed more cautiously. As the medical team left, Liam began to stir his eyelids, fluttering. He looked disoriented, then frightened as he registered the hospital room. Mom. His voice was small, uncertain. I'm here, baby. I sat on the edge of the bed, gathering him against me as much as the medical equipment would allow. You had a seizure, but you're okay now. His eyes filled with tears. Did I break the magic chair? Ethan made a choked sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. No, buddy. The chair's fine. We just need to make some adjustments. He moved closer, his hand gentle on Liam's back. I'm the one who messed up. I should have paid better attention to what your body was telling us. Liam looked between us, his perceptiveness cutting through his post-seizure fog. Are you guys fighting about me again? No, I said firmly, meeting Ethan's gaze over our son's head. We're not fighting, we're learning. Later, when Liam was cleared to go home and sleeping peacefully in his own bed, Ethan and I sat on my back porch, the night air cool against our skin. The silence between us felt different than before, no longer charged with anger and blame, but weighted with shared fear and responsibility. I thought I could fix everything, Ethan said finally. With enough money, enough technology, enough brilliant minds on the problem. He stared out into the darkness. But I can't fix this, can I? No, I said honestly. You can't. Neither can I. That's the hardest lesson of being Liam's parent, accepting that some things can't be fixed. They can only be lived with, adapted to, embraced as part of who he is. He turned to me, his face haloed in the soft porch light. How do you do it? Live with that kind of uncertainty every day. You just do, I said simply, because the alternative is unthinkable, because every smile, every accomplishment, every moment when he's truly happy makes all the fear worthwhile. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I want to learn, he said finally. Not just about the medical side or the technology. I want to learn how to be his father, the kind of father who sees him, really sees him, not just the problems to solve. I studied his face, searching for the ambition and detachment I'd grown to expect. Instead, I found only humility and determination, and something else I wasn't ready to name. Then start by listening, I said softly, to him, to his body, to what he needs, not just what you think he should have. Will you help me? He asked, vulnerability raw in his voice. I nodded slowly. Yes, for Liam's sake. And for the first time since that cream-colored invitation had arrived, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. The Magic Chair project evolved after that night at the hospital. Instead of working in isolation, we began collaborating with other families, other children with similar needs. What had started as one father's attempt to connect with his son expanded into something larger, more inclusive. Ethan's company provided the resources and technical expertise, My research foundation contributed the medical framework. Jason brought his therapeutic insights, but the true innovation came from the children themselves, Liam, and a growing group of young co-engineers who tested prototypes and offered surprisingly insightful feedback. The Junior Inventors Club met weekly in a space Ethan had converted at Prescott Technologies headquarters. Children of all abilities gathered around accessible workstations, their ideas and experiences shaping every aspect of the design. Liam thrived in this environment, his natural leadership abilities emerging as he helped newcomers feel welcome. I watched from the sidelines, my heart expanding and contracting in equal measure. The joy on Liam's face as he worked alongside his father was undeniable. The pride in Ethan's eyes whenever Liam mastered a new skill or contributed a breakthrough idea was genuine. But there were still moments when old fears surfaced, when Ethan missed a therapy appointment because of an investor meeting, or when I caught him checking emails during Liam's school presentation. The scars of abandonment didn't heal overnight, no matter how sincere his efforts seemed. Jason became our unexpected anchor, his steady presence a counterbalance to both my caution and Ethan's occasional intensity. He began joining us for family dinners, his easy rapport with Liam, and professional respect for both Ethan and me creating a space where we could all relax. "He's good for you both," my sister Rachel observed during one of her visits. "The three of you have this weird co-parenting vibe that somehow works." I brushed off her comment, unwilling to examine too closely the comfortable pattern we'd fallen into. The true test came 6 months after that fateful wedding day, when we unveiled the first official prototype of the magic chair at a pediatric technology conference in Boston. Liam had insisted on presenting alongside Ethan, his speech carefully rehearsed, but his excitement impossible to contain. I stood in the wings watching as my son, my tiny warrior who'd fought for every milestone, wheeled himself onto the stage without assistance. The audience of medical professionals, engineers, and families fell silent as this small boy positioned himself beside his father at the microphone. "My name is Liam Grant." He began, his voice clear despite the slight tremor in his hands. "And this chair isn't just for me. It's for every kid who wants to fly." As he demonstrated the neural interface, showing how the chair responded to his thoughts when his muscles wouldn't cooperate, I felt tears streaming down my face. Jason appeared beside me, silently offering a tissue. "He's incredible," he whispered. "They both are." I nodded, unable to speak, as Liam fielded questions with confidence and clarity beyond his years, Ethan stepping in only when technical details exceeded Liam's understanding. The pride on Ethan's face matched what I felt in my heart, this perfect synergy of his brilliance and my resilience embodied in our son. Afterward, as reporters and industry leaders swarmed them, I hung back content to let them have this moment. Jason remained beside me, his steady presence a comfort I'd come to rely on. "You know you made this possible," he said quietly. "Not just the medical research, the way you raised him to believe in himself despite everything. We all did," I replied, surprising myself with the inclusiveness of the statement. "You, me, Ethan, we all gave him something different." Jason studied me for a moment. "You've forgiven him." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Not completely. Maybe not ever for some things." I watched as Ethan knelt to bring himself to the level of a young girl in a wheelchair who was examining Liam's chair with wonder. "But I'm learning to separate the man he was from the father he's becoming." That night, after Liam had finally crashed from the excitement and Jason had headed home, Ethan and I sat in my kitchen, a bottle of champagne open between us. "Two successful partnerships," he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against it. "To Liam." We drank in comfortable silence before Ethan spoke again. "The board wants to establish a foundation, the Liam Prescott Foundation for Adaptive Technology." I blinked at the surname, Prescott, not Grant. The implication hung in the air between us. It would fund research development distribution to families who can't afford the equipment, he continued, "with you as medical director if you want it. And you as CEO?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. He shook his head. "No, I'd be on the board but not in charge. This needs to be bigger than me, than us." "Then why the Prescott name?" Because he deserves his father's name, Ethan said simply. If that's something you'd consider not just for the foundation, but for him. The question caught me off guard, not a demand, but a request. 6 months ago, I would have dismissed it outright. Now I found myself considering it. He's a Grant, I said finally. That's the name on his birth certificate, the name he's grown up with. Ethan nodded, accepting this boundary. What about Grant Prescott? For the foundation, at least. I studied him over the rim of my glass, searching for the ambition and ego that had once defined him. Instead, I found only openness, a willingness to meet me where I was, the Liam Grant Prescott Foundation. I tested the words. It has a certain ring to it. His smile, genuine without calculation, warmed something long frozen inside me. He hyphenated us. Seems only fair we return the favor. In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of our son's triumph and the quiet acknowledgement of how far we'd come, I allowed myself to recognize what had been building slowly over these months. Not forgiveness exactly, but something adjacent to it. A willingness to see Ethan, not just as the man who'd abandoned us, but as the father fighting to make amends. It wasn't love. Not again, but it was something like peace. 1 year after that cream-colored invitation arrived in my mailbox, I stood on the deck of our new home in Boston watching as Liam and his friend Sophie raced their magic chairs across the specially designed accessible lawn Jason supervised from the grill, occasionally calling out encouragement or caution as needed. The move had been Liam's idea. Surprisingly, if we live closer to Dad and Dr. Jason, we can work on foundation stuff every day instead of just weekends, he'd reasoned with that pragmatic intelligence that sometimes made me forget he was only 6. After months of commuting between my suburban clinic and the foundation's Boston headquarters, the logic had become undeniable. The foundation had grown exponentially with chapters opening across the country. My research was gaining international attention, and Liam was thriving in the collaborative environment we'd created. Ethan emerged from the house carrying a tray of drinks, settling beside me on the bench. "They're getting faster," he observed, watching the children navigate the obstacle course they'd designed. Too fast. I agreed, but without real concern. We'd all learned to balance caution with independence, protection with growth. "I hired Sarah Jensen today," he said, referring to a brilliant engineer with cerebral palsy whom we'd been courting for the adaptive interface team. "She'll start next month heading up the sensory development division." "Good." I nodded approvingly. We need more team leaders who understand the challenges firsthand. I took a sip of my iced tea. Jason's been offered the medical director position for the East Coast expansion. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Is he going to take it?" "I think so. He's excited about the possibility of reaching more families." We'd settled into this easy exchange of information, co-directors of a foundation, co-parents of a remarkable child. The wounds of the past hadn't vanished, but they'd scarred over, no longer raw and bleeding. Across the lawn, Liam said something that made Sophie laugh, her whole body shaking with it. Despite her more severe motor limitations, she'd become one of our most valuable design consultants, her sharp mind finding solutions where the adults often saw only problems. "He has your laugh," Ethan said quietly. "That full-body, no-holds-barred laugh, I noticed it the first time I heard it." I smiled, acknowledging the observation. "He has your focus, that ability to tune out everything else when he's working on something important. Poor kid got the worst of both of us," Ethan joked, but his voice held nothing but pride. "The best," I corrected. "He got the best parts." We watched in comfortable silence as Jason called the children over for dinner. Liam wheeled up onto the deck, his face flushed with exertion and happiness. "Mom, Dad, Sophie and I figured out how to make the chairs dance together. Can we show you after dinner?" "Absolutely," Ethan answered. "But food first, Dr. Jason's orders." Liam rolled his eyes dramatically. "Everyone's always a doctor around here." We laughed, the sound blending together in the evening air, a harmony I'd never expected to hear again. Later, after dinner had been eaten and the chairs had indeed performed an impressive synchronized dance routine, after Sophie had been picked up by her parents, and Liam had finally been persuaded into bed, I found myself alone with Ethan in the living room. "He wants to try standing for graduation," I said, voicing the concern that had been weighing on me. "The kindergarten ceremony next week. Ethan considered this. The therapeutic braces would support him for that long. Physically, yes, but if he has a seizure while upright... I didn't need to finish the thought. Have you told him no? Ethan asked. I shook my head. I wanted to discuss it with you first. We promised we'd make these decisions together. The simple acknowledgement that we were partners in this journey hung between us, significant in its ordinariness. What does Jason think? Ethan asked, always pragmatic. That it's a calculated risk. The seizures have been well controlled on the new medication. The emotional boost might be worth it. Ethan nodded slowly. Then I think we let him try. With both of us beside him, one on each side, and Jason nearby with the emergency protocol. The solution was so reasonable, so balanced between caution and courage, that I felt something tight in my chest release. This was what co-parenting should be, this thoughtful negotiation of fears and hopes. Okay, I agreed. We'll make it happen. Ethan smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way it hadn't in the early days of our reunion. He's going to amaze everyone again. That's what worries me, I admitted, that he pushes himself too hard trying to live up to some impossible standard, to impress us, to make you proud. To make you proud, Ethan corrected gently. He sees how strong you are, Olivia, how you never gave up on him even when you had every reason to. He paused. Even when I gave up on both of you? The acknowledgement, spoken plainly without excuses, was something I'd needed to hear for longer than I'd realized. We're past that. I said, surprised to find I meant it. Are we? Ethan asked, his gaze steady on mine. Sometimes I wonder if we'll ever truly move beyond what I did, what I missed. I considered his question seriously, searching my heart for the answer. I don't think we move beyond it. I think we move through it. Every day we make different choices. We're creating a new story. I smiled slightly. A better one. He reached across the space between us, his hand open, palm up, not demanding, just offering. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his. The simple connection felt like a bridge across 6 years of silence and pain. Thank you, he said quietly, for letting me be his father, for teaching me how... Thank you for becoming the father he deserves, I replied. We sat there, hands clasped loosely, the quiet house around us filled with the future we were building together, not the one we'd once imagined as young lovers, but something more complex, more resilient. Something built on the foundation of our broken past and our shared love for the extraordinary boy sleeping upstairs. 1 week later, I stood in the kindergarten auditorium, Ethan on one side of me, Jason just behind us. On the stage, Liam gripped his therapeutic braces, his small face set with determination as the principal called his name. With exquisite care, he pushed himself to standing, the braces locking into place as we'd practiced. A collective gasp went through the audience as he took one step, then another to receive his kindergarten completion certificate. I felt Ethan's hand find mine, squeezing tightly as our son stood tall, his smile radiant beneath the auditorium lights. Jason's steady hand came to rest on my shoulder, a silent recognition of the moment's significance. The magic isn't in the chair, Liam had told a reporter last week. The magic is in us. As I watched him stand on his own 2 feet, surrounded by the unlikely family we'd built from broken pieces, I knew he was right. The magic had always been there, waiting for us to find it together, waiting for us to stand.